Racist cafe owner kicks out black veteran, unaware who's watching. It was a warm Saturday afternoon in a small town where everyone knew each other. People gathered at Millstone Café, a long-standing diner owned by an old-fashioned man named Richard Mallory. Mallory was known for his strict ways and, unfortunately, for his deep-seated prejudices. That day, James Carter, a retired black veteran who had served in the Marines, walked into the cafe after running errands. Dressed in a simple button-up shirt and jeans, he carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who had seen more than his fair share of hardships. All he wanted was a cup of coffee and maybe a slice of pie before heading home. As soon as James entered, Mallory's expression darkened. He wiped his hands on a rag and stormed toward James with a scowl. "We don't serve your kind here," Mallory sneered loud enough for the whole cafe to hear. The chatter in the cafe died down as customers turned to watch the exchange. James, who had faced discrimination before, remained calm. "Excuse me," he asked, his voice even. "You heard me. Take your business somewhere else." A hush fell over the cafe, broken only by the clatter of a fork hitting a plate. Some customers looked uncomfortable, while others seemed indifferent. But what Mallory didn't realize was that someone was watching, and that someone had the power to change everything. In the far corner of the cafe sat an elderly man wearing a crisp suit, observing the scene with keen eyes. His name was Walter Graham, a well-respected businessman and town council member. He had lived in the town for decades and had seen how some people, like Mallory, clung to old, hateful ways. Walter pushed his chair back and stood up. His voice rang out, calm yet firm. "Mr. Mallory, do you know who this man is?" Mallory turned to him, frowning. "Don't care. He needs to leave." Walter stepped forward. "This man right here, James Carter, served our country for over 20 years. He risked his life so people like you could run your little cafe in peace. And you repay him like this?" A murmur spread through the cafe. Some nodded in agreement, others looked away, embarrassed. Walter wasn't done. He turned to the other customers. "I don't know about the rest of you, but I refuse to spend another dime in a place that disrespects a man who fought for our freedom." One by one, customers began standing up, some leaving money on the table but making it clear they wouldn't be coming back. A few even stopped to shake James' hand before walking out. Mallory's face went pale. He realized, too late, that his prejudice had just cost him more than just one customer. It had cost him his reputation, his business, and the respect of the community. James looked Mallory in the eye and said simply, "I didn't fight for just one kind of people. I fought for everyone, even you." Then he turned and walked out, head held high, as Mallory stood frozen, watching his once loyal customers follow the man he had tried to cast out. And from that day forward, Millstone Café was never the same again. The next morning, Mallory opened Millstone Café as usual, but something was different. The usual breakfast crowd, construction workers, teachers, and retirees, was nowhere to be seen. The tables that were normally filled with laughter and conversation sat empty. Even the smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon couldn't lure in his regulars. Mallory frowned, tapping his fingers on the counter. "Where is everyone?" he muttered. Then the door opened, and he sighed in relief until he saw who it was. Walter Graham. Walter wasn't alone. Behind him stood a reporter from the local newspaper, a young woman with a press badge clipped to her blazer. She held a notepad and a recording device. "Mr. Mallory," Walter said, his voice calm but firm, "this town won't tolerate racism. Last night, word spread about what happened here, and people made their choice. The people you insulted, disrespected, and dismissed? They won't be coming back." The reporter stepped forward. "Would you like to comment on the incident with Mr. Carter?" Mallory scoffed. "This is my cafe. I can serve, or not serve, whoever I want." Walter sighed. "Then I hope you're ready to watch your business collapse." That afternoon, the local newspaper ran a headline, "Veteran denied service in local cafe, town reacts swiftly." The story spread fast. By the next morning, the cafe's Google reviews tanked, customers flooded social media condemning Mallory, and even nearby businesses distanced themselves from him. Mallory's phone rang off the hook, not with orders, but with calls demanding answers. Even his suppliers hesitated to continue business with him. Meanwhile, James Carter was at home, unaware of the growing storm. That is, until his phone buzzed. "James, turn on the news," a friend told him. He did, and his eyes widened as he saw his own name on the screen. The story had been picked up by national media. Reporters were outside Millstone Café, filming the empty tables and interviewing locals who refused to support the business anymore. Then, his doorbell rang. When he opened it, Walter stood there, smiling. "James, you didn't just walk out of that cafe. You walked into history." The once bustling Millstone Cafe now resembled a ghost town. Richard Mallory sat at the counter, staring at the cash register that hadn't rung all day. His employees had quit. His regulars had found other places to eat. Bills piled up. The backlash had been swift. Social media was ruthless. Some called for his cafe to be shut down. Others demanded an apology. Protesters gathered outside with signs reading, "Racism has no place here, and veterans deserve respect." Mallory wasn't used to feeling powerless. He had built this cafe with his own hands. But now, he was watching it crumble. That night, he sat in the empty cafe, drinking coffee that had gone cold. He thought about what Walter had said, about who James Carter really was. A man who had fought for his country. A man who had walked away with dignity when he could have fought back. For the first time in his life, Mallory felt something strange. Shame. He knew there were only two paths ahead: stay defiant and watch his business collapse. Try to make things right. With a deep breath, he reached for his phone. The next morning, a live video appeared on the cafe's social media page. The town watched in shock as Mallory stood outside Millstone Cafe, looking nervous. "I want to say something," he began, his voice rough. "I messed up. I treated a man, no, a hero, unfairly. And I regret it." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I've spent my life thinking a certain way, but that doesn't make it right. What I did to Mr. Carter was wrong. He deserved better. And I'm sorry." Then came the hardest part. "James, if you're willing, I'd like to invite you back. Not just as a customer, but as a guest of honor." The video went viral. Some people praised him for owning up to his mistake. Others weren't so quick to forgive. The town waited to see if James Carter would respond. James Carter had never sought revenge. He had simply wanted respect. So when he saw the video, he had a choice to make. Later that afternoon, he put on his best suit, straightened his tie, and walked toward Millstone Cafe. The crowd outside parted as he stepped up to the door. Mallory stood waiting. His hands trembled as he extended them. James cut him off with a look. Then, slowly, he reached out and shook Mallory's hand. The crowd erupted into applause. James turned to them and said, "Hate doesn't change a thing. But if a man is willing to change, then maybe, just maybe, we should let him." From that day on, Millstone Cafe was never the same, but this time, in the best way possible. The handshake between James Carter and Richard Mallory sent ripples through the town. News stations picked up the story of redemption, and social media debates raged. Some applauded James for his forgiveness, while others felt Mallory didn't deserve a second chance. But James wasn't doing it for social approval. He had lived long enough to know that hate only breeds more hate. If a man was willing to change, then maybe he deserved the opportunity. The next morning, James stepped into Millstone Cafe for the first time since the incident. It was different now. Mallory had placed a sign by the door. "All are welcome here." Inside, people greeted James warmly, shaking his hand, offering free coffee. But James wasn't here for freebies. He walked straight to the counter. "Black coffee, slice of apple pie," he said. Mallory, standing behind the register, nodded. "On the house." "No," James said firmly, pulling out his wallet. "If this place is really different now, you'll take my money like anyone else." Mallory hesitated, then nodded, punching the order into the register. As James took his seat, he noticed a framed photo on the wall. It was a picture of soldiers, black, white, Latino, standing together. Above it was a plaque that read, "In honor of those who served." James stared at it for a moment before turning back to his coffee. Maybe, just maybe, this was a start. Months passed, and Millstone Cafe slowly rebuilt its reputation. New customers came in, and former ones returned. Some still held grudges, but most saw the change in Mallory. He greeted every customer with the same respect, no longer letting old prejudices cloud his judgment. Then, one day, a group of bikers rolled into town. Loud, brash, and rough around the edges, they walked into the cafe, looking around with amused smirks. One of them, a burly man with a leather vest, spotted James sitting at his usual table. "Didn't expect to see a guy like you here," he said, loud enough for the cafe to hear. The room went silent. Everyone waited. This was Mallory's real test. Mallory set down the coffee pot, walked around the counter, and stood in front of the biker. His voice was calm, but firm. If you're here for a meal, sit down. If you're here to stir trouble, you can leave. The biker raised an eyebrow. And if I don't? James slowly set his coffee down, watching closely. Mallory didn't flinch. Then you'll learn real fast that this isn't the place for that anymore. The tension held for a moment. Then the biker let out a chuckle. He pulled out a chair, sat down, and waved for a menu. All right, old man. Let's see if this place serves a decent steak. Mallory exhaled, then gave a small nod. The cafe returned to life. James took a sip of his coffee, hiding a small smile. Change was slow. It was hard. But sometimes, even the most stubborn hearts could learn. And in the town of Millstone, a place once known for division had finally become a place of unity.